This is Need to Know with Maria Hinojosa, Scott Simon, Ray Suarez, and this week, Jeff Greenfield.
On this edition, what issues will determine how the women of Virginia vote?
Kind of comes back to the economy for me, that the economy is doing well.
I don't want to see the rights that we have taken back 50 or 60 years.
Also, a veteran political player on what the women's vote really means.
There'll be a lot of suburban moms who are going to say, you know, maybe he's okay, but that party, they've just gone off the deep end for me.
And why both parties are not where the country is on abortion. Next on Need to Know. Welcome to Need to Know. Thanks for watching. It's been true for decades. There's a clear gender gap when it comes to politics. Women tend to vote more Democratic, men tend to vote more Republican. But there is a new twist to the split this year. After the midterm elections in 2010 gave Republicans political control in states across the country, new laws and regulations in many of those states sought to impose sharp restrictions on abortion and, in some cases, contraception. That effort, in turn, has reshaped the battle for the women's vote in key battleground states. Democrats are making these issues central to their case, while Republicans are still pointing to the fragile economy. Need to Know's Mona Iskander traveled to the state of Virginia and filed this report.
We need to know if Phil needs to run to Roanoke to get a projector. So can you just give me a call when you get this and let me know? Thanks.
Jenny Gallagher has a lot on her plate. She juggles the demands of raising 3 young children while devoting her free time as a first-time volunteer for the Obama campaign here in Blacksburg, Virginia.
My name is Jenny Gallagher, and I'm one of the team leaders here in Blacksburg.
Gallagher says she's motivated by Obama's policies to help middle-class families like hers. But she says she was also deeply affected when she heard about a bill that was introduced in the Republican-dominated Virginia General Assembly last winter.
When that bill came about, I was so angry.
That bill would have required that a woman have an ultrasound 24 hours prior to an abortion. For many women, that would have meant an internal transvaginal procedure. It was one of several bills proposed that critics say were designed to curb abortion.
I used to be pro-life, and I really feel like what's been happening, especially here in Virginia in the last year with women's issues, has really caused me to take a step back and look at what I believe. You know, I wish that abortion wasn't necessary. It's not a choice that I personally don't think I would ever make, but I will support another woman's right to do that.
Opponents of the bill staged a silent protest outside the state capitol. Many claim that the enforced internal procedure that the bill was calling for was an invasion of privacy. Some went as far as calling it state-sanctioned rape. The bill was eventually amended, but protests continued because the state now requires women in Virginia to undergo a non-internal abdominal ultrasound 24 hours prior to an abortion, except in cases of rape or incest.
The legislation and, and the comments that have come out of the Republican Party recently, they just reaffirm that I know where my vote needs to be. I know where my vote needs to go. I know who I need to vote for, and it's not Mitt Romney.
Okay, let me see.
In fact, Gallagher volunteered to appear in an Obama campaign ad designed to make women's reproductive rights a central issue in Virginia in the upcoming election.
I've never felt this way before, but it's a scary time to be a woman. Mitt Romney is just so out of touch.
Mitt Romney opposes requiring insurance coverage for contraception, and Romney supports overturning Roe v. Wade.
There's so much we need to do. We need to attack our problems, not a woman's choice.
I mean, that was a very, very public way of expressing your support for him.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, though? Why so public?
I was a little hesitant because choice is such a divisive issue, and I was a little bit worried that my family or I would face some kind of attacks, from that. But I couldn't not do it.
President Obama already enjoys a commanding lead among women in swing states, including here in Virginia, where he leads Mitt Romney by 12 points. And in a state where more than half of registered voters are women, the Obama campaign is working hard to hold on to that lead. especially as he trails Romney among men by 6 points.
He's made his choice. But what choices will women be left with?
The Obama campaign has been running ads focused on Romney and Ryan's positions on abortion and contraception. They've also tried to nurture a grassroots Women for Obama group in Virginia. Jenny Gallagher works closely with the group and supports their efforts.
How important are those types of issues to you?
I think in 2008, I would have said not at all, because, you know, when you have something that has never been threatened, you just take it for granted, right? Like, women's issues were completely off my radar. I've said before that it's a scary time for me as a woman and as a mother of a daughter, and that could not be more true. I don't want to see the rights that we have, taken back 50 or 60 years. These fights have already been fought by women. We don't need to do it again.
I thought that we'd already fought those battles, and I had no idea that we would be redoing this.
Catherine Waddell is a native Virginian and a grandmother of 3.
That's my granddaughter. That's huge.
When the ultrasound bill controversy erupted earlier this year, she and 7 other women got together and formed the Women's Strike Force, a bipartisan Virginia political action committee dedicated to electing pro-choice candidates from either party in the 2013 Virginia elections.
You were down there when this bill was being considered. I mean, why were you there? What's your stake in this?
Because I'm pro-choice, because I believe if you ask anyone the question, who should make decisions about women's reproductive health care, a woman and her doctor or the government? You'll find that most people will answer a woman and her doctor. And in talking to my doctor, my OBGYN, she has said that they have now gotten to the point where they are interfering with the doctor-patient relationship.
But Waddell is not your typical pro-choice Democrat.
Oh, that's George W. Bush when he was much younger.
She's actually a longtime Republican who for many years worked for state politicians. She also served a 2-year term as a delegate in the Virginia General Assembly.
I'm right there. Oh, yeah.
But as a board member of an organization called the Republican Majority for Choice, she has felt deeply conflicted over the direction of her party.
I believe in limited government. And I think that when you start getting involved in what's happening in people's personal lives, then that's no longer limited government. That's big government invasion. And I'm very opposed to that. I used to go to meetings and I would say, I am passionately Republican and I am passionately pro-choice. Now, it's very difficult for me to say I'm passionately Republican.
She has voted Republican in past presidential elections, but she says the rhetoric coming from the party over the last few months regarding women's issues has her struggling with who to vote for this time around.
Where do you see yourself now? I mean, do you feel let down by your party?
Absolutely, I do. They are making it difficult for women who support women's reproductive rights. So I'm having a hard time weighing all of those things and making my choice. And I probably will do that when I go into the booth in November.
Under Obama's economy, it's just not getting better.
The Romney campaign is determined to get women to focus not on reproductive issues, but on the weak economy and on the president's handling of it as the national unemployment rate remains consistently above 8%. Romney's first campaign stop in the state as the presumptive Republican nominee this past spring was at a woman-owned business in Northern Virginia.
Dear daughter, welcome to America. Your share of Obama's debt is over $50,000, and it grows every day.
And the campaign has launched ads like this, making the argument that women have suffered disproportionately in this economy.
More women are unemployed under President Obama. More than 5.5 million women can't find work.
On the ground, Romney volunteers get together to drive home that message.
Which party do you think can best fix the economy, the Republican or Democrat?
On this Monday night in Henrico County, just outside Richmond, a Women for MIT phone banking event is in full swing, with women making calls to other women, asking questions not about abortion or contraception, but about the economy. Some women here are volunteering for a presidential campaign for the first time.
Perfect. All right, you ready? Your next one.
Elizabeth Butler is one of them. She's a stay-at-home mom with 2 children. Butler's husband owns a small advertising company, and their concerns center around keeping costs down for the business and staying within their means at home.
The campaigns are trying very hard to get women voters on their side. As a woman, what are your biggest concerns?
You know, it all kind of comes back to the economy for me, that the economy is doing well. You don't know what's coming next. We don't know, with the tax cliff coming in January, whether, we'll have to pay a lot more or whether we can just sort of budget the same way we are now.
Butler says she's heard the Obama ads targeting women, but that as a pro-life Republican, she agrees with Romney's stances on reproductive issues. But at the end of the day, they aren't at the top of her list of concerns in the coming election.
When I look at what's happening in our country and the amount of crisis that we're having right now, it's just not registering. Women aren't talking about that. So it's not that they aren't interested in that. Every now and then you have, a cocktail with friends and, have a good discussion about it. But women just aren't talking about reproductive rights. Women certainly are not considering abortion to be a top discussion point for this campaign.
But some women would say these are issues that we can't let go to the side, that these are very important to be discussed right now.
Right, and those are the folks that are continuing to bring it up. And that's okay. It's okay to talk about it.
Back in Blacksburg, Jenny Gallagher and the other Obama volunteers are gearing up for the last couple of months of campaigning. At this organizational meeting, one of the topics they discuss, women's reproductive issues.
And those are the kinds of things that are at stake for women on the reproductive end, right?
The Romney campaign says that these social issues pertaining to women's reproductive rights are kind of a distraction, that they're taking away from the real issues like the economy. What do you say to that?
I say that that's completely false. I mean, we do not shy away from the president's record on the economy. And as far as the women's issues being a distraction, that's something that a man would say, I do not feel like my rights are a distraction, and when I talk about women's issues, I don't just mean choice. My children having money to go to college, that is a women's issue. Having access to health care for myself and for my children that I can afford, that is a woman's issue.
For Elizabeth Butler, talk of reproductive issues takes away from what she thinks are more pressing concerns. And she believes that the attacks on the Republican Party are unjustified.
Some women's groups have said that there's a war on women being waged right now by the Republican Party. Do you agree with that?
Well, if there is a war on women, I'm definitely not feeling it. I mean, the women that I interact with they like the Republican Party. The Republican Party represents the values that we have and the values that we're trying to teach our children.
He didn't even make it through the primary.
As for Catherine Waddell, she says she'll continue to devote her time and energy to keeping women's reproductive rights front and center.
We spoke to a few women who said, that they have concerns about reproductive rights, but this is not the right election for that this is all about the economy.
Sure, jobs in the economy are important, but so are women's reproductive rights and women's access to good health care, from breast exams to pap smears, all of that. I don't think any woman can dismiss women's reproductive rights and say that this is not the right campaign for that. It's always the right campaign for that.
For a broader perspective, I'm joined now by Elaine Kamarck, a veteran of 6 Democratic presidential campaigns and author of Primary Politics, an in-depth guide to the presidential nominating process. For the past 15 years, she's been a lecturer in public policy at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Welcome, Elaine.
Thanks. It's nice to be here.
When we talk about the gender gap and women's issues, the tendency is to focus on issues like abortion. Fundamentally, is that why women tend to vote Democratic more than Republican?
I think it's fundamentally an economic issue. Women have always been more economically insecure than men. If you're a mother with 3 children and your 3 little kids and your husband walks out, you have a problem. And therefore, women have always had a greater appreciation for the social safety net, for the role of government in helping people who are in trouble. So I think it's fundamentally economic, but I do think that abortion is, and rights issues are an important part of the equation.
Let me just flip this for a minute. Why do men tend to be more Republican?
I think men tend to be more Republican because of they feel that they are the commanders of their fate. And it's men who inhabit the rugged individualism that is so American. And so men tend to think, I can do this all by myself, I don't need any help, etc. And I'm in charge of my life, my family, etc. Women are more vulnerable, mostly because they've got children with them. You have 3 little kids hanging on your skirts, and you can't run as fast. And I think women have always had a different outlook on that.
So that when someone says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, for a lot of women, that's not the punchline to a joke.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Now, ever since 1980, when the Republican Party took a very tough, hard stand on abortion, I've heard people, like the woman we heard in this piece, saying, you know, I'm a Republican, but I'm pro-choice, and that's not what I want to hear. But the fact is there have been 5 Republican candidates for president who've been elected with that no exceptions rule right there in their platform, which I'm going to talk about later. Explain that.
Well, I think that people don't really believe that the Republicans are going to do anything about this. And in fact, those 5 Republican presidents didn't spend any time or any political capital on trying to restrict abortion rights. In fact, I think the fact that there's been so much inaction from people who say that they're going to do something about abortion has probably led the pro-life segment of the Republican Party to kind of go off the deep end on a couple of issues, like the vaginal probes for people who want to have an abortion. I mean, that backfired on them. Mm-hmm. And I think other things that we heard in this campaign from Rick Santorum, for instance, they ended up backfiring on the Republicans. But I suspect it's probably frustration on the part of the real zealots that, in fact, the candidates who say that they're for them never, in fact, deliver.
On the Democratic side, it seemed to me that at the convention, the party really went all in on this issue. There was no modulation about this.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the nights of the convention seemed to be devoted to this issue. That didn't happen by accident. So what does that tell us about what the Democrats think about this issue?
Well, I think the Democrats think that the Republicans have gone out on a deep end and are going to wake up this sleeping giant of an issue. Prior to these primaries, this was going to be an election not about abortion or any of the social issues. It was going to be an election purely about the economy. And then you had this kind of crazy Republican primary where you had very far out statements on the part of a lot of people trying to run for president, not to mention people like Todd Akin, who's the Republican Senate candidate in Missouri, who thinks that women, when they're raped, can't get pregnant. A little loony, okay? And that you had a party kind of veering way off to the right. And it woke up that issue, surprisingly.
Is there a danger on the Democratic side, though, that by going all in on a kind of, we're for abortion rights under any and all circumstances, is there a danger for the Democrats? As you've been somebody who in the past has warned the Democratic base, watch it on some issues.
Of course. In fact, this year, the Obama administration got in trouble over the issue of whether or not his health care plan would require Catholic institutions to cover contraception. And so, every time either party moves from that sort of mushy middle where most of Americans are, they do, in fact, get themselves into trouble. So Democrats, I think, need to go back to Bill Clinton's formulation about abortion: safe, legal, and rare. Because what the rare does is it says to the people who are uncomfortable with this, we understand. This is not a great thing that anybody goes through. And so we understand your ambivalence on the issue.
When you look ahead to November, and I hate predictions probably as much as you do you think at the end of the day, cliche alert, that abortion is going to be a significant factor in this election?
You know, if you had asked me that a couple of months ago, I would have said absolutely no way. On the other hand, given what the Republican Party has done, and given Mitt Romney's own, sometimes he's for it, sometimes he's against it, stances, I think it could end up playing into a Democratic victory just because there's going to be a lot of suburban moms, kind of like we saw in the piece that just preceded this. There's going to be a lot of suburban moms who are going to say, you know, maybe he's okay, but I don't know where he is. And that party, they've just gone off the deep end for me.
Okay. Elaine, Kamarck, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff.
This week online, take part in our weekly poll. The topic, abortion restrictions. Let us know what you think and why. Visit pbs.org/need-to-know.
This is Need to Know.
Finally, if you want a dramatic example of the gap between the most ardent supporters of the two parties and the broad middle of the country, you can't find a sharper issue than the abortion question. To go by their platforms, both Republicans and Democrats have staked out positions that can fairly be described as absolute. To go by the polls, the country is in a very different place. As recently as 1976, the Republicans offered a pro-choice candidate, Gerald Ford, and a platform that simply noted widely divergent opinions. By 1980, its candidate, Ronald Reagan, was squarely against abortion, and the platform was too. And since 1984, the GOP platform has declared, quote, "The unborn child has a fundamental individual right to life which cannot be infringed." Taken literally, that would forbid all abortions, possibly even to save the life of the mother. The platform also backs a human life amendment to the Constitution. And the Democrats? Well, back in 1996, the party's nominee, President Bill Clinton, reiterated his position this way.
Abortion should not only be safe and legal, it should be rare.
But in the Democrats' current platform, rare is a missing notion. Rather, the party says, quote, "The Democratic Party strongly and unequivocally supports Roe v. Wade and a woman's right to make decisions regarding her pregnancy, including a safe and legal abortion, regardless of ability to pay," unquote. It makes no reference to any limits about how late in a pregnancy this right would apply or any other limits. Indeed, it says, quote, "Abortion is an intensely personal decision between a woman, her family, her doctor, and her clergy. There is no place for politicians or government to get in the way," unquote. Now, by contrast, look at what polls tell us about where Americans stand. A Gallup poll last May found that 50% call themselves pro-life, while 41% call themselves pro-choice. But these numbers measure personal feelings, not what people think about what the law should say. So even though most people identified themselves as pro-life, only 20% believe abortions should be completely banned, and only 25% thought abortion should always be legal. More than half thought it should be legal, but with restrictions of one kind or another. In other words, overwhelming majorities do not agree with the Democratic platform position or the Republican platform position. Just to add in one final note, Mitt Romney, the Republican presidential nominee, would support abortion in the case of rape and incest, which means he disagrees with his own party's platform. And when late-term abortion was outlawed by Congress back in 2003, 17 Democrats, including the Senate Democratic leader, voted for the bill. Nothing like absolute clarity on an issue, is there? That's it for this edition of Need to Know. For more, please visit pbs.org/need-to-know. And don't forget to take part in our weekly poll while you're there. And for continuing election coverage from PBS programs, please visit pbs.org/election2012. On next week's program, The View from Main Street, John Larson reports from Pueblo, Colorado. A steel town in the process of reinventing itself is on edge as the election approaches.
Both blue-collar, white-collar, working families, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety.
The View from Main Street on the next Need to Know. I'm Jeff Greenfield. Thanks for watching.